Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Housing Element Supplemental EIR Scoping meeting. My name is Martha Battaglia. I'm a senior planner for the town of Corte Madera, and I've been working with Adam Wolf on the update to our housing element. The town of Corte Madera, like all other Bay Area jurisdictions, has begun the process of updating our housing element in order to update the town's housing policies and programs through 2031 and to accommodate the regional housing needs allocations for the town as determined by the state and the Association of Bay Area Governments. The purpose of tonight's scoping meeting is to inform the public that the town of Corte Madera is evaluating a project under CEQA and to solicit public comment regarding the type and the extent of environmental analysis to be undertaken. If any member of the public has questions about the housing element or any of the sites or anything related to the housing element, planning staff is happy to meet with you outside of tonight's meeting to answer any questions that you may have. And the town is very fortunate to be working with EMC Planning Group on the environmental analysis of our housing element. Here with us tonight is Terry Whistler-Adams and Stuart Poulter, both from EMC, who will be going over a presentation related to the environmental analysis of the project. And also joining us is Christine O'Rourke from O'Rourke and Associates, who we are also fortunate to be working with on this project. So I'd now like to turn things over to Stuart and Terry, who will be going over a presentation.
Great. All right. Actually, Martha, if you could go to the title slide first.
Yes.
We'll start with there. Okay, thanks. All right. Hello, everyone. As Martha mentioned, my name is Stuart Poulter, and I'm with EMC Planning Group, a land use and environmental consulting firm based in Monterey. The town of Corte Madera has hired EMC Planning Group to prepare an environmental impact report, or EIR, to evaluate the environmental impacts of updates to the town's housing, land use, and safety elements, along with municipal code updates, all of which is considered a project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. A notice of preparation and attachment document were sent to local agencies and posted on the town's website on March 16th for a required 30-day public comment period. Though not required as lead agency under CEQA, in this case, the town of Corte Madera is encouraged to allow agencies and the public to provide comments on the scope of the EIR during what's known as a scoping meeting. Staff have decided to use this opportunity, this virtual scoping meeting, as an opportunity for public and agency comments to be received. The intent of this scoping meeting is to allow for comments specific to the scope of the EIR. However, we won't be addressing questions on the specific analysis of the EIR at this point in time. Next slide. Right. Okay, so before I get into the specifics of the project, I just wanted to provide a quick overview of CEQA. CEQA has a number of goals and objectives, but specifically the key purpose of CEQA is to inform both decision makers and the public on the environmental impacts of a project. California statute requires public decision makers to identify, evaluate, and disclose the environmental consequences of their decisions. At its most fundamental level, CEQA is a public disclosure process which encourages early and active participation and input from the public. And we'll talk a little bit later about opportunities for public involvement as part of this housing element update process. Next slide. Okay. So the proposed project we are reviewing under CEQA is the town's housing element update. However, in order to update the housing element in this sixth housing cycle, which covers the years 2023 through 2031, the town also needs to update or amend two other general plan elements, the land use element and the safety element, as well as the town's municipal code under titles 22, which is the objective design and development standards, and title 18, zoning. All of these actions can be characterized as general plan amendments or zoning amendments and are considered discretionary projects that require environmental review under CEQA. Next slide. As part of the housing element update process, the town has identified 9 opportunity sites appropriate for the development of housing for a range of income levels, and the town would rezone those sites as necessary to meet the requirements of state law. The proposed project also amends the general plan land use designations to accommodate for these 9 sites to accommodate the changes specified in the housing element update. And through consultation with the Corte Madera community at a series of public workshops, town staff have identified 9 opportunity sites that will need to be rezoned to allow more density than currently permitted. The 9 sites are located across Corte Madera, and the table on this slide specifically provides an overview of the existing and proposed residential and commercial development capacity for those 9 sites. As you can see, it is anticipated that the housing element update could result in a maximum of 773 new residential units spread across the 9 sites, and an assumed likely new commercial square footage of 237,167 for a net decrease of 33,857 commercial square feet across over existing conditions in the town. Next slide. So just for a bit of background, back in 2009, the town adopted their general plan and certified the general plan EIR. The general plan EIR addresses the environmental impacts associated with the general plan, and many of the issues addressed in the general plan EIR are still considered adequately addressed for the current housing element update. However, some issues will require new analysis, and therefore we are preparing an EIR that is supplemental to the 2009 general plan EIR. A supplemental EIR only needs to include information necessary to make the previous EIR, the 2009 general plan EIR, adequate for the proposed project. Noticing and public review requirements are no different for a supplemental EIR over a full EIR. The next slide. So before getting into the issues that will be addressed in the supplemental EIR, I just wanted to briefly go over the issues that have been deemed adequately addressed already in the 2009 general plan EIR. These issues include agricultural and forestry resources, cultural resources, with the exception of tribal cultural resources, which were not previously required to be evaluated in 2009, geology and soils, human health and risk of upset, otherwise known as hazards, with the exception of wildfire, which now requires a higher level of review under CEQA per state law. Additionally, hydrology, water quality, and mineral resources were all adequately addressed. Next slide. Environmental issues to be covered in the supplemental EIR include aesthetics, air quality, biological resources, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, noise, public services and utilities, sea level rise, transportation, tribal cultural resources, wildfire, and project alternatives. Just a little more about public services and utilities. CEQA requires that we look at the project's impact on law enforcement, fire protection, emergency medical services, as well as schools, parks, and recreation facilities. The purpose of our analysis with regards to public services and utilities is to determine if build out under the housing element update would require the provision of new or physically altered facilities, which would constitute an environmental impact. Regarding utilities, CEQA requires that we look at water, wastewater, and solid waste. The purpose of our analysis here is to determine if water, wastewater disposal, and solid waste disposal providers can accommodate build out under the housing element update, or if new or physically altered facilities are required, or for example, if additional water supplies are required. So regarding transportation and traffic impacts, I'm going to turn to my colleague, Terry Whistler-Adam, also with EMC Planning Group, to briefly address this topic.
Thank you, Stuart. As some of you may know, traditional transportation analysis looks at the level of service at various intersections and roadway segments. A couple of years ago, the state legislature changed that rule. We're no longer concerned from a CEQA perspective, from an environmental review perspective, about how intersections operate. And so level of service is no longer considered a metric by which to evaluate transportation impacts. But now we have to look at vehicle miles traveled and determine how many additional vehicle miles traveled would be associated with the project that's under review, in this case, the housing element. So we will be doing a vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, analysis in compliance with CEQA. But in order to provide an additional level of review, and town staff does want to know what how the intersections in the town would operate with this much new residential development. We are also doing a level of service analysis at 12 intersections within the town that are anticipated to be most impacted based on our preliminary review. And that's it for transportation. I'll send it back to you, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. All right, next slide. All right, so tonight is, as we'll mention, tonight is one of many opportunities to get involved in the housing element process and to provide comments on the scope of the housing element CEQA review. The NOP is available on the town's housing website and at Town Hall. Verbal comments will be accepted tonight, though written comments are encouraged and will be accepted until Friday, April 15th. And you can direct your comments to Adam Wolf, who's Director of Planning and Building at the town, at the address or email provided on this slide. Next slide. And there will also be more opportunities going forward to provide comments, as noted on this slide, which provides a brief overview of the anticipated schedule for the CEQA review process over the next 9 months or so. And as you can see, the draft supplemental EIR is already underway, and we anticipate finalizing the draft document for public review sometime later this summer. At that point, when the draft supplemental EIR is released, the public and other public agencies will have 45 days to submit comments to the town on the draft supplemental EIR analysis. After the 45-day public review period, a final EIR or final supplemental EIR will be prepared sometime in the fall, which will address all public comments during the 45-day review period. And then public hearings are anticipated to take up the housing element update and the final supplemental EIR for certification, which is anticipated late this year and early into 2023. Next slide. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Martha with the town of Corte Madera to take any public comments on the scope of the supplemental EIR.
Martha, you're on mute.
Thank you. So any attendees who are here this evening and would like to provide a public comment, now would be the time to do so. If you want to raise your hand, and I will give you permission to speak. And as a reminder, we're taking any comments on what should be analyzed as part of the environmental review of the supplemental EIR. Okay. Okay. Melissa, you had your hand down and then you had it up and then you lowered it. Did you want to speak? I'm going to allow you to talk in case you do. You should be able to speak. You may need to unmute yourself. Melissa, are you able to speak? It looks like you're connecting to audio. If you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak. Okay. If you want to speak, do you want to raise your hand again so I know that you want to speak and are just having technical difficulties? And then if you don't raise your hand, then I will just assume you did not mean to raise your hand. Okay, so it looks like hopefully you're not having technical difficulties. So are there any comments that anyone has? It looks like you're connecting to audio. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. If anyone is interested in speaking, you can raise your hand and I will give you permission to speak. Okay. Christine, I'm not doing anything wrong, am I, with the unmuting attendees? I just want to make sure.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that our participant might be having trouble, connecting, but maybe if she can't connect, she could always provide her comments to the town staff and they can get it to our consultants.
Okay. So I'm not seeing any raised hands. I can continue the last couple of slides, and then we can always come back and Melissa, maybe you could try again as well. So let me continue. I'll share my screen again. Okay, so this slide shows where we are heading. As you can see, we here are at the NOP scoping meeting this evening, and all of the milestones related to the environmental analysis are shown in the deep red color. And as Stuart mentioned, there will be a 45-day review period for the supplemental EIR, and that is going to be the end of July. And once the document is released, then there will be a 45-day comment period in which members of the public and agencies can submit comments, which the town will respond to. And the town is going to be making a push to get additional input in the next several months. Community outreach events, which are shown in green, include such things as pop-up events and surveys and focus groups and workshops. And where the town is interested in hearing from as many people in the community as possible, and we want to incorporate as much as we can into the housing programs and policies which will be part of the draft housing element. And we also anticipate that the draft housing element will also be released for review in July, and that is shown in anything related to the housing element is shown in this blue color. And then with adoption scheduled for the end of this year into early January 2023 for both the CEQA document and also for the housing element update as well. And so as Stuart mentioned, sorry, we are accepting verbal comments here this evening, and we also will be accepting written comments through Friday, April 15th, which can be provided to the town through mail or by sending an email to Adam Wolf. And again, I want to reiterate that planning staff, both myself and Adam, are more than happy to sit down with anyone and answer any questions related to this project. And also, I would like to recommend that you review the housing webpage, which is shown here on the slide. There's a lot of great information on the housing webpage, including all of the recordings from the workshop series that the town did. There's 6 workshops that include some really great content. And also you can sign up to be added to the interested parties list on the website as well. And you'll be notified of all future workshops or hearings related to the housing element and the CEQA review as well. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and we'll see again if anyone wants to make any comments. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay, so as a reminder, written comments can be submitted up until April 15th. And if you have any questions, you can email either myself or Adam Wolf, and we can schedule a time to meet and answer any questions that you have. So thank you for attending tonight's scoping meeting. Is Terry or Stuart, is there anything you want to add?
Not at this time, no.
Thank you, Martha.
Okay. Christine, anything to add before we close the meeting?
No, it's all good. Thank you,
Okay.
Mark.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.